Hi students, good morning. During the last few classes, we were discussing about magnetic effect of current, and we have seen in the last class when there is a current carrying conductor, that current carrying conductor can act as a magnet, and the magnetic field intensity can be calculated using either Biot-Savart law or Ampere's circuitous law. So, using Ampere's circuitous law, it is the easy method to find out the magnetic field intensity. Then, during the last session, we have seen when there is a moving charge and that moving charge is present in an external magnetic field, it will experience a force, magnetic force. And that magnetic force is given by Q into V cross B, and that force will be perpendicular to both the velocity and the magnetic field. As a result of that force, it derives a circular path when it is perpendicular. That means the velocity and the magnetic field are perpendicular, then it derives a circular path. Then when you are having a simultaneous magnetic and electric field, that means electromagnetic field, simultaneous electromagnetic field, then when you are subjecting this crossed electromagnetic field or simultaneous electromagnetic field into a moving charge, it will experience both magnetic force and electric force. It will experience both magnetic force and electric force. So the total force acting should be the sum of electric force and magnetic force. And that force is known as Lorentz force. That total force is known as the Lorentz force. So Lorentz force is the sum of electric force and magnetic force acting on a moving charge when it is subjected to a crossed electromagnetic field. And that we have stopped with the concept of Lorentz force. So when you are having a charged particle in an external magnetic field, a charged particle with a velocity in an external magnetic field, it will experience a force, and that force should be perpendicular to both velocity and magnetic field. And such a force always perpendicular to the velocity is centripetal force. And as a result of the centripetal force, the particle derives a circular path. So the radius of the circular path is given by, or it is determined by the velocity. So when the velocity of the particle inside is more, the radius will be more. Or when the particle is moving within a higher radius, its velocity will be more. So when you want to have an accelerated charged particle, what to do? You have to move it in a crossed electromagnetic field. So electric field will provide a potential, and that potential provides its energy. K is equal to Q into V, that we have already seen. As a result, it acquires a velocity, and when it is subjected to a magnetic field, now what will happen? A magnetic force also will introduce them. So when that magnetic field direction is perpendicular to the direction of velocity, then it derives a circular path. When you are increasing the radius of the circular path, what will happen? The velocity increases. When the velocity of the charged particle increases, what about its kinetic energy? Its kinetic energy also increases. So if you want to make a charged particle at high energy state, you can make use this method. That means you have to subject that charged particle into a simultaneous electromagnetic field. Electromagnetic field means it should be a crossed electromagnetic field. Crossed electromagnetic field means electric field and magnetic field should be perpendicular to each other. That is a crossed electromagnetic field. So when a charged particle is subjected to a crossed electromagnetic field, it will experience both electric force and magnetic force, and as a result it derives in a circular path. As the radius of the circular path increases, its velocity increases, and the velocity increases, its kinetic energy increases. Then you can make that particle into a high energy state. This concept was given by the same Lorentz, and Lorentz designed a device to accelerate charged particles into high energy state. Especially it is used for positively charged particles, and that device is termed as, or it is named as, cyclotron. So cyclotron is a device that can be used for accelerating positively charged particles into high energy state. So the basic principle that I have already told you, when a charged particle is subjected to a crossed electromagnetic field, it will derive a circular path in the crossed electromagnetic field, and when the radius of the circular path increases, the velocity increases, or in vice versa, or the velocity increases, the radius increases, that automatically increases the velocity again. Then as the velocity increases, its kinetic energy increases, and that is the basic principle of cyclotron. So now we have to see the design and working of a cyclotron. Remember, cyclotron is a particle accelerator generally used for accelerating positively charged particles. Okay, the diagram shows the cross section of a cyclotron. See, it consists of two horizontal D-shaped hollow metal segments D1 and D2. Two metal hollow segments D1 and D2, and hemispheres, that is in the form of hemispheres, and they are called Ds. D-E-E-S, they are called Ds. Why they are called Ds? Because they are in the shape of capital D, capital letter D. That is why they are called Ds. And you can find a small gap between these two Ds. And an alternating potential of the order 10 to the power 5 volt is provided between these Ds. High potential, that means 10 to the power 5 volt, and its frequency will be 10 to 15 megacycles per second. 10 to 15 megacycles per second. That means a high voltage at a high frequency. It is provided between the AC potential. AC potential is provided between the Ds. Why you are using AC potentials here? Because AC potential alternatively changes the polarities of D1 and D2. That we will come to while we are discussing about the working. Now we are talking about only the design of the cyclotron. So we have two Ds, two hollow metallic hemispheres, and they are provided with a high potential with a high frequency AC. And a magnetic field is denoted there B in the upward direction. So it is of about 1.6 Tesla perpendicular to the plane of the Ds. And it is kept in an evacuated chamber with 10 power minus 6 millimeter of mercury. Pressure inside the evacuated chamber will be 10 to the power minus 6 millimeter of mercury. Okay, so that is the external setup. And in between the gaps of the Ds, you can find a source S, which can provide you the positively charged particles which are to be accelerated. So that is the source of charge, that is the charge source. So this is the basic requirements for a cyclotron. This is the basic requirements for a cyclotron. See, this is the diagram for an actual cyclotron. You can find two D's there, that brown shaded, two D's are there. Then in between a gap you can see, then potentials are provided. Then a circular evacuated chamber will be kept in an evacuated chamber. And this is the practical diagram for cyclotron. And this is the cross-sectional schematic diagram of cyclotron. Its working principle that we have already seen. When we were talking about the magnetic, a charged particle with a velocity enters into a magnetic field, it derives a circular path, and the circular path provides provides a centripetal force, and the radius is given by the radius is proportional to the velocity of the particle. The same principle that we are going to use here, and I request you to remember that equations of the radius of the circular path and the time period of revolution and frequency. Three equations we have used there or derived there, and you remember those three equations while discussing the working of this cyclotron. Okay, then we can go for working of cyclotron. Okay, the purpose of this cyclotron is to accelerate the positively charged particle provided by the source. Suppose since we have connected D1 and D2 to a high voltage AC source, D1 is positively charged and D2 is negatively charged at a moment. D1 is positively charged and D2 is negatively charged at a moment. At that moment, a positively charged particle from the source comes out. So when a positively charged particle comes out from source, since D2 is negatively charged, that charge will be accelerated towards or attracted towards D2. When it enters into D2, the magnetic field is provided perpendicular to the plane of the D. Then velocity and B are perpendicular to each other. Velocity of the charged particle as it accelerated towards D2 and the B are perpendicular to each other. Then what will happen? It derives a circular path. See, the first dotted circular path in D2, that smallest one. So when it derives that semicircular path in D2, at the moment what happens is the polarity of the D's are changing. D2 will become positive and D1 will become negative. Then what will happen? D1 attracts that charge. So the charge moves to D1 and it is again accelerated, so the radius of the circular path increases. See, in D1 it derives the first semicircle with a radius larger than the first in D2. So it derives a semicircular path, first semicircular path in D1, and as it completes the semicircle, again the polarity changes. D2 will become negative and D1 will become positive, and D2 attracts, as D2 attracts particle again accelerated, derives a larger radius in D2, then again polarity changes, D1 attracts, moves in a larger radius, then each time when the charged particle completes a half circle in D's, the polarity changes and get accelerated, again derives a larger radius, and finally you can see the radius of the circular path goes on increasing, and as the radius increases, the velocity of the charged particle increases, then its kinetic energy increases, and when it reaches the required energy level, then it is taken out to the external circuit. That external path also to outer circuit also you can see in the diagram. So that is a method for accelerating a charged particle in cyclotron. Generally, these highly charged particles, highly energetic charged particles are used for collision experiments. And that is why a deflecting plate is shown there, so as to make it to the outer circuit, and it is directed towards the target to be collided with that particle. So it directly hit with that particle when it is subjected to sufficiently energy level, and the basic principle you remember, as it moves in a magnetic field with a velocity in a perpendicular direction, it derives a semicircular path, and after each semicircular path the polarity of the D's changes, then again it gets accelerated, then it derives larger radius in different D's, opposite D's, and as the radius increases, velocity increases. So how it happens? When the radius increases, velocity happens. That equations I can show you now. See, force on a moving charge in a uniform magnetic field, the radius is given by mv by qb. So as r increases, or r is equal to v is equal to qb r by m. So as r increases, m also increases. R also v increases when r increases. And total time period to complete one full cycle t is equal to 2 pi r by v. But when the particle derives a semicircular path in a t, it will not be 2 pi r by v, it will be pi r by v. So the time taken for completing one half cycle in a hemisphere will be pi r by v, that is pi m by qb. It will not be 2 pi m by qb, 2 pi m by qb for deriving a full circular path, but in hemisphere it completes in 1d, it derives only a half cycle. So the time of revolution in 1d will be pi r by v, that will be pi m by qb. So the cyclotron frequency is given by qb by pi m. It will not be qb by 2 pi m, it will be qb by pi m. So that is cyclotron frequency. And cyclotron velocity. Cyclotron velocity is given by qb r by m. So that is the basic principle of cyclotron. And cyclotron is a particle accelerated for positively charged particle. So there are some limitations for this cyclotron. One is, it cannot be used for accelerate particles to the velocities comparable to the velocity of light. When the particle reaches the velocity of light, the mass of a particle increases according to Einstein's equation. Einstein's equation is that is m is equal to m0 divided by 1 minus v by c whole square, root of 1 minus v by c whole square. And according to that equation, special theory of relativity, as the velocity increases, mass also increases. So it cannot be used for accelerating the particles up to the velocity of light. And the second drawback is, it cannot be used for accelerating uncharged particles. It is used for only charged particles. And it is not used for accelerating electrons. The reason is, the first one itself, as the electron is lighter one, as it get accelerated, its velocity will be equal to the velocity, maybe be equal to the velocity of light, so its mass changes. So electrons cannot be used for, electrons cannot be accelerated using cyclotrons. So remember that. Okay, so that is the working of a cyclotron, which is a particle accelerator. So when you have a charged particle present in an external magnetic field, when you have a charged particle present in an external magnetic field with a velocity, it will experience a force. It will experience a force, and that force is given by F is equal to Q into V cross B, where Q is the charge, V is the velocity, and B is the magnetic field intensity. So when you consider a current carrying conductor, through that conductor, free electrons are moving with a velocity. With what velocity? With drift velocity. So when you consider a current carrying conductor, that current carrying conductor carries electrons with a velocity. So when a current carrying conductor is placed in an external magnetic field, the charged particle present in that conductor, which provides the current, which are the free electrons, will experience magnetic force. Since the electrons are experiencing the magnetic force and these electrons are present in that conductor, that force will be experienced by this conductor also. Are you getting that concept? When the charged particles with a velocity are present in an external magnetic field, they will experience a magnetic force. So when you place a current carrying conductor, that current carrying conductor carries free electrons with a velocity, drift velocity. So obviously these electrons will experience a force. And since these electrons are present on that conductor will also experience a force. In simple words, we can say, whenever a current carrying conductor is placed in an external magnetic field, that conductor will experience a force. What will be the force and what is the direction of that force? That we have to calculate. So we can go for force experienced by a current carrying conductor in an external magnetic field. See, here you have a conductor of length L with an area of cross section A is placed in an external magnetic field of intensity B, and B is denoted as cross, that means it is into the plane of this board. Its direction is into the plane of this board. And see, electrons are moving with a velocity Vd in a direction opposite to the current I shown here. I already told you, we have already seen that I is from positive to negative, but electrons are moving from negative to positive, that is opposite. So they will experience a force, and that force is denoted in the upward direction. Why it is denoted in the upward direction, that I will tell you later. First of all, we have to find out what is the force, and after that we will find the direction of the force acting on that conductor. So see, a force F dash is the force experienced by electrons. F dash is the force experienced by one electron, and it is denoted in the upward direction. Okay, so what is F dash? F dash is equal to Q into V cross B according to above equation, that is the force on a moving charge in an external magnetic field. F is equal to Q into V cross B. What is Q here? Q is the charge of the particle. Here it is electron, so electronic charge. Then what is V here? The velocity with which these electrons are moving, that is the drift velocity Vd. And what is B here? B is the intensity of magnetic field, and sin theta in general case, theta is the angle between V and B. So we can say that F dash, force on each electron F dash will be EVdB sin theta. No confusion regarding that. So if there are n, small n is the, that we have already discussed, small n is the number of electrons per unit volume, A is the length area, and L is the length. So capital N is the total number of electrons, that will be N into A into L. So total force experienced by all the electrons F is equal to N into F dash. N into F dash, which is equal to EVD by sin theta multiplied by NAL. EVD by sin theta is F dash and NAL is capital N. So from that, some terms you can take together, that is NEAVD. You can remember that that is the current I, and BL sin theta. So you can take it as F is equal to IBL sin theta, which is equal to ILB sin theta. ILB sin theta, you can take it as IL cross B. Okay, so the force is IL cross B, which means this force is also perpendicular to the direction of current and the magnetic field. The force experienced will be IL cross B. So in simple words, we can say, if a conductor of length L carries a current I placed in an external magnetic field B, it will experience a force that is given by ILB sin theta in simply IL cross B. So that is a force experienced by a current carrying conductor in an external magnetic field. Current carrying conductor in an external magnetic field. So we have seen that external magnetic field, when a current carrying conductor is placed in an external magnetic field, it will experience a force, and that force is perpendicular to both current and the magnetic field, IL cross B. So the direction of the magnetic field is given by a rule called Fleming's left hand rule. It is given by Fleming's left hand rule. So Fleming's left hand rule says that if you are stretching your first three fingers of your left hand in such a way, your forefinger in the direction of magnetic field, and the middle finger in the direction of current, and in which direction the thumb is pointing, that is the direction of force. That is the direction of force. So when you are having a current carrying conductor placed in an external magnetic field, and you are, suppose, see, in X direction the current is flowing, and in Y direction the magnetic field is acting. So you are stretching forefinger in X direction, middle finger in Y direction. So in which direction thumb is pointing? That is in the positive Z direction. So that is Fleming's left hand rule. So to find out the direction of magnetic force acting on a current carrying conductor, you can make use Fleming's left hand rule. And it says that if you are stretching the first three fingers of your left hand in such a way, forefinger in the direction of field, magnetic field, middle finger in the direction of current, and the direction of the thumb will provide you the direction of force. Suppose you are just reversing the direction of any, that means current or magnetic field. Suppose you are having the current in the opposite direction, or the magnetic field in the opposite direction. So magnetic field is towards my right. Suppose I am changing the field in the direction of opposite. See, now the thumb is pointing down, which means the direction of the force is now in the downward direction. Or the current direction is changing. Current direction is changing means just like this. Field is in the same direction, current I change, so the thumb is pointed down. Which means if you are changing either the direction of current or the magnetic field, the direction of the force also changing. Now you can go back to the diagram that I have shown you. Magnetic field intensity is acting into the plane, current is acting towards the left, and the thumb is pointing in the upward direction. That is why the force experienced by electrons are directed in the upward direction. Are you getting now? So that is the direction of magnetic force given by Fleming's left hand rule. This is the case when you are having a charged conductor placed in an external magnetic field. Suppose you are having a charged conductor. So here you are having a current carrying conductor, and current is moving in the upward direction. Surrounding this, a magnetic field is there, it is obvious, and you can find the magnetic field intensity due to a current carrying conductor that you have already got as mu0 I by 2 pi r b. And direction also we have seen, on the right it is into the plane, on the left it is from the plane. So on the right, into the plane, a magnetic field is acting, and I am placing another current carrying conductor at that region. Already I am having a current carrying conductor. Towards my right, a magnetic field is acting into the plane, and I am keeping another current carrying conductor in that point. So what about the second conductor I placed? The second conductor is a current carrying conductor that now I placed in an magnetic field of intensity V is equal to mu0 I1 by 2 pi r, where I1 is the current flowing in the first conductor. At a distance r, I am placing another conductor with a current I2, and suppose its length is L, and suppose it is an infinite length, and when you are considering a length of L there, so the force experienced by L length of this conductor is ILB sin theta. Is it? A current carrying conductor, when it is placed in external magnetic field, it experiences a force, it is ILB sin theta. So when you are having the first current carrying conductor, and in its field you are placing the second current carrying conductor. But when you are considering the second in the reverse way, suppose you have the second conductor with a current I2, it can provide a magnetic field to the left, it is mu0 I2 by 2 pi r. In that region you are placing the first conductor with a current I1. It will experience a force I1 L cross B2. Is it? Which means when two current carrying conductors are placed parallel to each other, first one will exert a force on second one can also exert a force on first. So we are going to calculate what is the force between two parallel current carrying conductors. See the diagram. In the diagram you can see the same situation denoted as A. Straight conductors are there that you find now. So PQ and RS are two parallel conductors with the currents I1 and I2 respectively. That means PQ carries a current I1, RS carries a current I2. Due to PQ at a distance R, magnetic field B1 is represented there, and B1 is crossed, that means into the plane, and that current I2 will provide a magnetic field B2 to the left. It is denoted as a dot there, that is into the plane. On PQ you can have a dot, that is the magnetic field provided by I2, which is acting from the plane of the board, since it is towards the left. Okay, so since I1 is the current due to on PQ, so B1 is the magnetic field due to I1 on PQ. That is given by mu0 I1 by 2 pi r. B1 is equal to mu0 I1 by 2 pi r. Now when you consider RS is both these conductors are infinitely long, and you are considering only a length L of both the PQ and RS. So a small length L of, a length L of RS will experience a force since it is placed in the magnetic field B1 carrying a current I2. So the force acting on L meter length of RS is given by force on L meter length of RS is given by F is equal to I2 into B1 into L sine theta. Theta is 90 there, so I2 into mu 0 I1 by 2 pi R into L, so mu 0 by 2 pi I1 I2 L divided by R. Okay, then force per unit length you can find out there. F by L is equal to mu 0 by 2 pi I1 I2 divided by R. Is it clear? Now, as I told you, and what is the direction of the force? You can see that RS is experiencing a force towards PQ. RS is experiencing a force towards PQ. Remember, both the currents are moving in the same direction. RS will experience a force towards PQ. Now you can consider the reverse situation, as I already told you. Suppose PQ is placed in a distance R from RS, and due to I2 on RS, a B will be there, that is B2. B2 can be expressed as mu 0 by 2 pi I2 by R. Is it okay? Then PQ is having a current I1, so L length of PQ will experience a force F is equal to I1 into B2 into L sine 90. That is I1 into mu 0 I2 by 2 pi R into L, that is mu 0 2 pi mu 0 by 2 pi I2 I1 L divided by R. When you are calculating F by L, that remains mu 0 by 2 pi I1 I2 by R. What it says? It says both the conductors are experiencing same force per unit length. Both are having the same force per unit length, and remember the direction of force on PQ is denoted towards RS. Both the forces are calculated using Fleming's left hand rule that you can apply by yourself, and you can find both are acting towards each other, which means when two current carrying conductors are placed parallel to each other, they will attract when the current flowing through are in the same direction. When two current carrying conductors in the same direction placed close to each other, they will attract. In other words, we can say two similar currents are attracting. And the second diagram B, you can see the current in the I2 direction is reversed. So the direction of force are opposite to each other, then they will repel. That means the current flowing in opposite directions are repelling each other. Okay, so the force per unit length F by L is given by mu 0 by 2 pi I1 I2 divided by R. Suppose both are carrying the same current, I1 and I2 is equal to I, so that F by L will become mu 0 into I square divided by R. I square divided by R. Suppose R equal to 1 meter. Suppose R equal to 1 meter, then and F by L is equal to, F by L is mu 0 4 pi into 10 to the power minus 7. They will cancel off. Then F by L is equal to 1 Newton per meter. Sorry, F by L is equal to mu 0 by 4 pi into I square by R. Mu 0 by 2 pi will become 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 multiplied by 1 divided by R. Since, sorry, R equal to 1 meter. So 2 pi 4 pi into 10 to the power minus 7 divided by 2 pi multiplied by I square by R. When R equal to 1 meter, F by L will become 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 when I equal to 1. When I equal to 1. So you can define 1 ampere of current from that. 1 ampere is the current which, when flowing in each of the two infinitely long parallel conductors 1 meter apart in vacuum, produces a force of 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter between them. If you are having two current carrying conductors kept parallel to each other, if they experience a force 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter, then the current flowing through each is 1 ampere. So that is the definition of 1 ampere in terms of magnetic force. That is the definition of 1 ampere. If two parallel current carrying conductors are kept close to each other with a 1 meter apart, then they will experience 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter. Then the current flowing through each will be 1 ampere. That is the definition for 1 ampere. So that is the end of this chapter, moving charges and magnetic field. So here we have seen that whenever a current is passing through a conductor, that conductor will act as a magnet, and surrounding that a magnetic field is there. That magnetic field intensity can be find out either using Biot-Savart law or Ampere-Circuitor law. Then we have seen force on a moving charge in an external magnetic field. Then a current carrying conductor will experience a force in the external magnetic field, and definition of 1 ampere. So that's all about today, and we will meet in the next class.